Now, a couple days ago, Matt Smith did an interview on the Happy, Sad, Confused podcast, and if you're not sure who Matt Smith is, he's probably most famous for playing the 11th Doctor on Doctor Who, and if you don't know what Doctor Who is, then I really can't help you. But anyway, he did this interview where he was asked about his involvement with the Rise of Skywalker, a film he was heavily rumored to be in back in the day. There was even at one point a casting list put up, I believe on the official European Star Wars website, that had him on it, only to be taken off a short time later, which, no surprise, only further fueled rumors and speculation about what his role would be. However, as we now obviously know, he was not in the film. The rumors have persisted that he was going to be in it, and that there were even scenes that were deleted or unused with him playing supposedly a young Palpatine. And yes, he does look like he could pull off a young Palpatine quite well. But anyway, in this interview, and I'll play a brief bit of it now, he sets the record straight on all of this, yet at the same time sort of reignites some questions as well as raises a few other issues that I'll talk about after.
You were going to be in the Rise of Skywalker. Matt, did you ever shoot any Star Wars scenes?
No, I didn't. There was, we were close to me being in it, but then it never quite happened. I think the thing they were thinking of me for, eventually the part became, it became obsolete and they didn't need it. And so I never got to be in Star Wars. There we are.
Wait, what? Here's conjecture. Was this Palpatine's son? Was that who you were playing?
I could not possibly say. But it was a pretty groovy thing. It was a really groovy part and concept. It was big. It was a big thing. It was like a big story detail, like a transformative Star Wars story detail. But it never quite got over the line.
No, I can't deal with this. I'm going to have nightmares about this now.
Yeah, I mean, it was like it was a big shift in the history of the franchise.
Okay, so first of all, a lot of people seem to be making a really big deal out of this, speculating on what this huge game-changing or transformative role for the franchise could have been. And though I love speculation and theory as much as anyone out there, I'll even be talking more about that in a second. I, for one, in this particular case, think it's pretty obvious he was going to play Palpatine or a clone of Palpatine or a younger version of Palpatine, maybe after he soaked up all that dyad power. Or maybe he was going to play Palpatine's son, that we were originally going to see more about all of that. And that the reason this role became obsolete, as he himself said, is because they have Ian McDiarmid to do all of it. They didn't feel like they needed him for any of it. Or they didn't feel they needed a younger Palpatine scene for some reason or another. Or they scrapped the idea of him becoming much younger, again after soaking up some of that dyad power. And the reason why Matt Smith is saying in this interview that it was such a big deal, that it was a transformative role, and mind you, I have no idea how big of a Star Wars fan he is or isn't, how much he knows about it, or all the lore. Anyway, the reason he's saying all this is because that's exactly how they initially pitched the role to him. They told him he was going to probably be playing Palpatine returning, and this was going to be a huge thing for the franchise, that the big bad villain from the first two trilogies was coming back to cap off the third. In other words, I really don't think there's anything much here, that all he's describing is a different version of what we got. I mean, I'm sure, as we kind of can tell by the way the Rise of Skywalker turned out, they were throwing all sorts of ideas around, but that they all centered around the concept of bringing Palpatine back somehow. And one idea was likely to have him come back in a younger or cloned body, which would be played by Matt Smith, which, yes, is a big transformative sort of deal for the franchise. Though that's still what we ended up getting anyway. It was still the huge twist for Episode 9. And so what I think is actually the more interesting takeaway from all of this is how wrong all the leaks and rumors claiming that there were filmed scenes deleted, how wrong they were. Because in this interview he goes on to say that it was never anything more than a couple meetings with Lucasfilm. He never even tried on a costume, and much less filmed anything. Meaning, wherever these rumors of deleted or unused scenes came from, they were complete BS. And don't get me wrong here, yeah, sometimes the leaks do turn out to be true. A lot of things that came out about the Rise of Skywalker beforehand were very accurate, including a script leak which was, I don't know, maybe 90% or more accurate to the final product. But it feels like for every one that is accurate, there are 10 more false ones out there. Which again really makes me wonder where these rumors do actually come from or how they start. Do they have any credence at all? Are they coming from Lucasfilm to do anything from muddy the waters? Because, as I just said, sometimes real leaks do happen, and you want to confuse people as to what's real and what's not by just putting a bunch of fake ones out there to, again, muddy the waters. Or are most, if not almost all of these rumors and leaks just completely fabricated by whoever is reporting on them for the clicks and views that come along with them? Or do they maybe come from, or do some of them come from, legit sources inside Lucasfilm who maybe want to test the waters with a possibility to gauge fan reaction to something before ever bringing it to fruition and spending possibly millions and millions of dollars on it? I mean, just a couple days ago, I made a video about a rumor that Maul is getting his own animated series, and the reason I talked about that rumor or reported on it, when I've really tried not to report on too many rumors lately, is because I do think there could be some truth there. It does feel like there's a possible setup going on for a Maul series, which I talked about in the video. Anyway, what was maybe a bit interesting about that video or the comments section, and caught me by surprise considering how beloved Maul is in the fanbase, is the number of people who didn't like the idea of a Maul animated series, who think the character is overused, or that his story is done and told, or that they just want some new characters to focus on, that they need to stop milking old characters for as much money as they can get from them. Which is certainly fine if that's the way you feel about Maul or him getting a series, but it might confuse Disney and Lucasfilm to hear all that, considering if we really stop and think about it, he hasn't been used all that much. He's barely in The Phantom Menace, as we know, though he is loved in the little bit he is in that film. Then he comes back for a few story arcs in the Clone Wars. He then comes back again for a few episodes during the second half of Season 3 of Rebels, where he dies again. And then he gets a cameo in Solo. And other than some material in the expanded universe that not all fans dig into, that's all we have of the character. You then compare that to a character like Obi-Wan Kenobi, who obviously had a major part to play throughout the entire prequel trilogy. He's then featured in the Clone Wars animated series, he has a role to play in the original trilogy, of course, and so on. There's plenty about him in the expanded universe material and comics and other places as well. In other words, we've gotten a lot of Obi-Wan Kenobi, and granted he's perhaps the most popular character in the franchise, but we've gotten far, far more of him than, say, Darth Maul, who is also way up there on the popularity list. And yet, arguably, what fans are looking forward to the most right now out of Star Wars is the upcoming Kenobi series. It's looking forward to more Obi-Wan Kenobi, a character you could certainly argue has had his story done and told and is now being overused. So again, I wouldn't be surprised if this tends to confuse Disney and Lucasfilm as to what exactly do the fans want. And so it wouldn't surprise me at all if the rumors of a Darth Maul series or a Maul series come directly from the Lucasfilm just to, as I was saying before, test the waters, to see how open or closed fans are to the idea before going ahead and greenlighting it and spending all that money. But if Disney and Lucasfilm don't like the response, it'll never come to pass and it'll remain a rumor that never happened. Or if they do like the response and deem it to be positive enough on social media and elsewhere, they will then move forward with it. I mean, it's basically just a way of using social media to pull the fan base, and why not do that? Then again, maybe that's not what's happening at all. Maybe it's anything from people claiming to have insider info just to get clicks and views, or people who think they're getting insider info but their sources are not so reliable. All I know is that leaks and rumor videos or articles have become very, very popular and prevalent these days, and have seemingly all but replaced the theory or speculation video, which, if you remember, especially after The Force Awakens, was the big thing. Everybody was putting out their Rey and Snoke theories, including myself. Heck, that's even how I really got started or gained any traction here on YouTube, by putting out a theory video where I said that Rey was going to essentially be a nobody, that who her parents were wasn't going to matter, and if anything, we'd find out they were deadbeats or something along those lines, and that she, a young woman, would have to overcome all of that and become something all on her own, that who she would become was more important than where she had come from, is always how I put it back then. And there were some people, a lot of people, who thought and told me that was the dumbest theory they'd ever heard. Of all the videos I've done on YouTube, it's easily gotten the worst thumbs up to thumbs down ratio, because again, people hated the idea of Rey being a nobody. They wanted her to be a Skywalker or a Kenobi or even a Palpatine. They wanted her to fit into the story better. And even people who liked the video would often say they didn't like the theory itself, but agreed it made sense, or they could see it happening, or that I presented the evidence well enough. And so, not to talk myself up, but imagine an alternate reality where Disney and Lucasfilm had paid attention to the comments on that video, and if I'd made it sooner with enough time to change things about Episode 8. Anyway, imagine if they'd paid attention and saw just how many fans hated the idea that Rey would be a nobody, and then course corrected, or should I say course corrected before the Rise of Skywalker course corrected. And again here, I'm not trying to talk myself up or say Lucasfilm should have listened to me. In the grand scheme of things, I'm just a fan like everybody else who just likes to talk about Star Wars. I sometimes know what I'm talking about and I sometimes don't. But what I am saying is that it pays literally to pay attention to your fan base, to learn what they want, and what they'll continue to pay for. And you know darn well if they could go back in time and do the sequels over again, they would. They would try to make something that wouldn't split the fan base and would instead have more marketability after the fact than what they did create. And so I think, more than anything right now, Disney and Lucasfilm want to avoid making more mistakes with Star Wars. I think The Rise of Skywalker was proof or evidence that they tried to listen to fans and to make something that all fans would sort of rally around and enjoy. That was the goal with that film, though I'm not saying it pulled that off in any way, shape, or form. Anyway, this all leads me to the question to ask you, which is, where do you think these leaks and rumors come from? Do you think this is Disney and or Lucasfilm testing the waters, trying to get things out there, or maybe muddying the waters to confuse people as to what is legit and what isn't? Or is this maybe people just claiming to have insider info and maybe having a shred of it and then putting it out there and running with it despite not really being sure about where their source is coming from? Or is it possible that it's just completely fabricated by people wanting clicks and views? I tend to think it could be a combination of all three, but as usual, I would love to hear your thoughts on all of this. Well, that's all I've got for you this time, and now it's your turn to let me know what you think about all this. What do you think about the leaks and rumors and where they come from? So leave a comment below and let's talk some Star Wars. And until next time, thanks for watching.